welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning in to another episode this week. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and this week we are going to be talking all things Lynx in the playoffs. We're just coming off of I guess you could say a week-long span of the Lynx playing their first two games in Connecticut in the first round of the WNBA Playoffs. And what a week it was. What a pair of games that it was for both Minnesota and Connecticut. It was kind of a tale of two games. And it's setting up for what I think a lot of people didn't expect as a winner-take-all Game 3 this coming week in Minneapolis. And that's I mean, you could say that, Minnesota had a successful season in reaching the playoffs. But the fact that they are not only the fact that they won a road game, but the fact that they are playing a winner take all Game 3 and they have a chance to make to the semifinal round. So it was a great 2-game span. Great performance from Minnesota, and it's setting up for a great Game 3 that is going to be rocking at Target Center. I know that Lynx fans are going to bring it at Target Center on Wednesday, and it should make for a fun atmosphere. And hopefully a fun game to follow that. But with that said, I am joined this week by somebody who I write with at Winsidr. And we actually previewed the series between Connecticut and Minnesota together, Jamauri Bowles. Jamauri does a great job with a lot of, a various amount of, WNBA coverage. And him and I had a good time with working alongside him in previewing the series. If you want to go back and look at that preview that we wrote together with our predictions, kind of X factors in the series, you can go check that out at winsidr.com. But Jamauri and I have been working together at Winsidr all season long, along with the rest of the crew there. Please go check out all of their work at winsidr.com, as I mentioned. But Jamauri, I'm lucky to be joined by him this week to talk about the series and just kind of what's transpired, what has been the difference in each game, as well as looking ahead to Game 3. And we kind of dive into everything from what took place, what's going well, what's going wrong, what each team needs to do, and then what's going on in Game 3 and what to expect from Game 3, and ultimately who we think is going to win in Game 3. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with Jamauri. Jamauri, how you doing, man? Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Mitchell. Doing all right. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, as I talked about right before we started recording this podcast, you and I had previewed the series at winsidr.com, and we kind of touched on X factors and key things to watch throughout the series, and we've definitely seen a lot. We've seen kind of a tale of two stories throughout this series. So I wanted to touch base with you and kind of further break down this series and what we can kind of expect in Game 3. So I appreciate you joining. And before we get started, I just wanted to open it up to you to kind of allow you to plug your work and where people can find you, where people can follow you on social media and all of that good stuff. So if you want to do that, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jamauri Bowles. I write currently for Winsidr, and I've joined Winsidr recently at the start of the year. It's been really awesome. Shout out Winsidr. I've been writing a couple articles on some of the different teams during the season, from the Seattle Storm to the Phoenix Mercury to the New York Liberty, Chicago Sky, and the Connecticut Sun. And if you want to find me, you can find me on X, or the platform formerly known as Twitter, at Jamauri Bowles. And feel free to follow me.
Yeah, definitely go follow Jamauri. I admittedly, and I apologize for this, I've apologized to you a couple times. I didn't even know I wasn't following you until you said something to me. So I am now a follower of Jamauri. So everybody go follow Jamauri. It's a great follow. So, but yeah, so to kind of go back on what I talked about earlier, we previewed this series, before it started at winsidr.com, and there were a few things that we had touched on in our preview, and I think that's kind of lived out in this series too. I mean, a couple things that come to mind for me, coming into the series that we saw during the regular season was, Connecticut's ability to defend Minnesota really well. They do that against everybody else, but they, specifically when it comes to Minnesota, they've done that really well. In the 4 games in the regular season, they turned Minnesota over quite a bit. And really that's been a big factor in the first 2 games. In game 1, I mean, Connecticut, did a little bit of everything. They looked really impressive. They had, 16 threes, and then they had 19 turnovers that resulted or 19 forced Minnesota into 19 turnovers that resulted in 30 points on the Connecticut side. So that alone, I mean, Kayla McBride said after the game, that's 78 points right there out of the 90 that Connecticut scored in the first game. So that obviously was a big difference maker, and then Minnesota just couldn't do enough offensively on the other side of things, and it ended up being a blowout. But then in game 2, it flipped. Game 2 on Sunday, obviously Minnesota bounced back with a win to force a winner take all game 3. But that kind of flipped where Minnesota kind of did what Connecticut did to them in the first game. Minnesota owned the battle behind the arc from deep. And then, they actually turned Connecticut over rather than, the other way around. So it was a nice bounce back performance for Minnesota, and it's going to set up for a great game 3. But, Jamauri, I kind of wanted to just touch on you. What were maybe some things that stood out to you in the first few games on either side?
I would say, looking at the first 2 games, just looking at who's been producing the points. I think in the first game, with the Lynx, it felt like it was really just Napheesa Collier and Kayla McBride, and no one else was really able to get going. And then I know in this game, that kind of amped up a bit even more. Kayla McBride was great. Napheesa was great. We're able to get some protection from some other players. Like what sticks out in my mind from this game that we saw today as we're recording, as the Sun were making their push, from the end of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, it seemed like they were bound to take the lead or maybe at least tie the game. But then, Bridget Carlton comes up with that huge 3 that sort of, gives them a little breathing room. And Connecticut, maybe got a little closer after that, but quite frankly, it just wasn't enough. And, it was not, they weren't able to, get that tie or get that lead. And that really, allowed Napheesa Collier and Kayla McBride to continue to go on with what they were doing. And that's what I see as one of the main reasons why we're going to game 3 in Minneapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it to your point that it seemed like, whether it was Bridget Carlton or Kayla McBride or even Rachel Banham or Napheesa Collier in the first half, or, you kind of go down the line. In game 2, they all stepped up in key moments. They all hit big threes, which is what you need to do on the road specifically. Take that momentum out of it, take kind of the home fans, out of the game and kind of, swing things back into your favor. And that's what Minnesota did time and time again. I mean, every time Connecticut tried to battle back into the game, Minnesota hit a shot, or they went on a, little maybe 5-0 run to kind of, stretch things out and, pull it out of reach again. And that's hard for especially a team that, I mean, any team, but I mean, that's hard for anybody to kind of battle back from. When you're trying to battle back into a game like Connecticut was, and then you can't get stops on the other end, you're not going to be able to, to outlast them. And that's the thing with Minnesota is they're a very different team when they do have that balance. I mean, Napheesa Collier and Kayla McBride, they do a great job. They do night in and night out. But they need that supporting cast. They need, a shot here and there. They don't need, Bridget Carlton to go off for, 15 points off the bench. If she does, great, but they don't need her to do that. They need her to do what she did on Sunday, where she was hitting a couple shots. She hit, I think, 2 threes, but they were both timely threes. And they were at big moments of the game. They need, the hot start from Diamond Miller in the first quarter, kind of doing a little bit of everything. She didn't finish with a great stat line, but that was enough to set the tone early on. And then you got Dorka Juhas in the middle, Tiffany Mitchell pitching in, and then Rachel Banham coming off the bench. And, all of that, when Minnesota does have that balance and they do have, a little bit of a supporting cast alongside Fee and Kayla McBride, that's a great recipe for success for this team. And that's something they need to continue to do. I mean, it's easier said than done, but that's something that if they can do that in game 3, it'll be a very tight game. And I would say that Minnesota has even a good shot of, coming out on top in that game. One thing that you had talked about with your X factor was the bench, and bench on both sides. In our preview, the one thing you touched on was, in your X factor portion of that. That was something too that was a big factor in game 1 compared to game 2. Connecticut, they had, I think it was Ty Harris coming off the bench, I think she had like 3 threes in the first game. And that was enough for, I think she finished with double figures or something like that. But Connecticut's bench did enough to help them, come out on top and get that spark early on. Where in game 2, it seemed like, excuse me, Minnesota had a lot of that on their side of things. Why were you, why was the X factor the bench for you? I know you kind of dove into it in your preview, but why was that something that you were watching in this series?
Yeah, it was just something I took a note of as I was, digging up, information about the series, the regular season series that is between these two teams. I noted on our series preview that in the 4 regular season meetings, that the team that won the game also was the team that had the most bench points. So that was something that was a interesting nerdy little stat that I digged up there and wanted to take note of. And also I felt like that is something important to have. Obviously, as we all know, I think I mentioned in the series preview that we did that bench play is key, and I think seen that play out in the series, and particularly with the Connecticut Sun, I felt like that was important as well, particularly when you look at the Sun, it's their leading scorers, Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner, and you don't really hear a whole lot about the backcourt, like Tiffany Hayes and Natisha Heidemann, and if the backcourt isn't going off for the Sun, you may want to look to the bench. And it wasn't really the case with the bench today for the Sun. And if you put that alongside the fact that the backcourt for the or in game 2 was not at their best. Tiffany Hayes only had 6 points, I believe, and Natisha Heidemann went scoreless. That spells trouble for the Sun, if all this pressure to do the scoring and have this create offensive production comes from Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner, and to some degree also Rebecca Allen. Rebecca Allen had I think 10 points as well. I think she had 1 or 2 threes. I could be wrong about that, but I felt like that was important. The bench play to take into consideration for this series for both teams as well. I mentioned with the Lynx, about Bridget Carlton, Rachel Banham. I feel like I'm blanking out another player, but I know that also, of course, Jessica Shepard, she's missed these 2 games, and I don't know about her availability for game 3. And of course, Lindsay Allen's missing as well. Maybe Ariel Powers can be in that conversation. So we'll see. But bench play is important.
Yeah, that'll be kind of shifting focus to game 3. That'll be important too, to see what the Lynx look like. Well, you could even make that argument for both sides. What injuries look like. I know DeWanna Bonner went down with an elbow to the face. I'd imagine she'll be fine for game 3. But you look at the side of the Lynx. I mean, they had Nafisa Collier went out in the 3rd quarter with a lower back injury. She said that she kind of had sharp pain in her lower back when she stepped wrong. So it'd be interesting to see. She did end up coming back into the game, but it'll be interesting to see how she recovers, how that back is feeling going into game 3. And then Tiffany Mitchell, she went out with looked like almost an ankle sprain or some sort of ankle injury. She did return as well, but it's interesting to follow that. And then, like you mentioned, Jess Shepard, before the game, she was upgraded, I guess you could say, from out to doubtful. But that's a sign of progress for her as well. If they can get her back, Minnesota, gets even stronger with their depth. And I think that especially against a team like Connecticut, which has talented post group, a player like Jess Shepard would be a very welcomed, return to the team.
Absolutely.
When it comes to game three, what maybe are a few things that you are looking for in game three? Is it similar stuff to like what we wrote in our preview, or now that we've seen two games, has anything changed on your side of what you're going to be looking for in game three?
I would say a little bit of the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really going to be looking at for uh, really for both teams, as mentioned, who's going to step up for the Sun. And I just mentioned it, the backcourt, Tiffany
Mm-hmm.
Hayes, again, didn't have as good of a game as she did in game one. Don't know if that's, just a bad shooting or anything related to the lower leg injury or issue that she's having. And, I mentioned Atisha Heidemann had 6 points, I believe, in game one, as mentioned, nothing in game two. So see if they can get going, particularly with and contributing to the team's 3-point shooting. Game one was really really good. Game two not so much. I think the Lynx shot a better 3-point percentage in game two than the Sun did.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that for the Sun, and then for the Lynx, seeing if everyone's healthy, like Nafisa Collier is good to go. Seeing more of the same from her, Kayla McBride as well, and maybe see if any of the between the two rookies, Diamond Miller and Dorky Juhas, if any of them can have a big impactful game.
Mm-hmm. I think it will be, I didn't think of this until you just mentioned it, with the Lynx rookies specifically. I think it'll be very beneficial to be playing back at home. And they're more comfortable obviously in front of their home crowd, but maybe them more than anybody else on the roster. I'm looking for them to have, a strong, performance in game three, just because it is tough, especially in your first playoff experience, to play in the road or on the road. And in an environment like Connecticut, it's a rowdy environment. It's a great environment, at Mohegan Sun Arena. But they were very, you could tell that they were trying to get a feel for things, and they, maybe nerves or kind of that anticipation maybe got to them in game one. They were a little bit more comfortable in game two, and we saw that with the early start from the rookies and kind of the spark that they provided right away. But I would say that might even take it up a notch. In game three, it might even turn up a notch with what they're able to do. And then with the rest of the roster, I mean, it'll only help playing at home, as I mentioned. The Lynx fans. I mean, the players talked about it, and Nafisa Collier and Kayla McBride talked about it post game after the game two win on Sunday. They talked about how rowdy it is at Target Center, how loud it is, how how supportive the Lynx fans are. You have that with any fan base, but in a winner take all game, that's important. And having that home court advantage is a very important aspect. But
yeah. I just wanted to add that I think I also saw I think it may have come from you and or some other people reporters who were in the Lynx press conference with Cheryl Reeve, where she had the quote about a team that goes from 0-6 to being 40 minutes away from the semifinals. Who would have thought that, or along those lines? And I saw a funny post from across the timeline on there talking about oh, Cheryl Reeve doesn't looks like Cheryl Reeve doesn't want to go into overtime because obviously that's more than minutes. So you're like, let's get this done in regulation.
Right.
But yeah, it is. It's great to see that the Lynx have put themselves in this position from that start that they had. 0-6 looked like they were going to be in early, contention for lottery and positioning for the top pick, and to find themselves in this spot with an opportunity to take down the number 3 seed that's led by the newly named Coach of the Year and Stephanie White, a team that won 27 games. That's really really good by the Lynx.
Yeah, I mean, considering where they were at, like you mentioned, the 0-6 start, I thought getting a win in the playoffs would be a success, and they've done that. And not only reaching the playoffs, but getting a win in the playoffs is a success. But now, like you mentioned, they have a legit shot to advance to the semifinals, and if they can do that, I mean, even coming into the year before that 0-6 start, if you would have said that the Lynx are going to make the playoffs, win a first round game, have a chance to win the series, I think they would take that. Given the roster that they had at the time, or have have right now even. But it's a great stepping stone, and regardless of what happens, during the playoffs, or what happens in this series, whether they win or lose game 3, being able to have that playoff experience goes a long way, especially with a young team like that. And if you can get in, a couple players that have playoff experience already, this team, next year could be a top 4 or 5 team. And they could turn things around very quickly. But I mean, it's like I said, regardless, it's a success, and getting this experience will go a long way for the team moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if sorry, just to say it real quick, like even if they do win and have an opportunity to play the New York Liberty,
right.
I wouldn't automatically rule them out. I would still favor the Liberty, but I wouldn't automatically say a sweep. The Lynx did get that one win over the Liberty. Now, of course, I think that home game, I think it was, where the Lynx won and Liberty were coming off a back-to-back. But a win is a win. It's still a great win. There's still a bunch of superstars on that Liberty team. So I would not, automatically dismiss the Lynx from, causing trouble for the Liberty in a potential series against them.
Yeah, absolutely. With that said, what I guess do you have, looking at game 3? Do you have any predictions? What do you think personally will happen in game 3?
Yeah, I predicted that the Sun would win the series in 2. I was wrong. That's okay, but yeah, I'll credit to the Lynx. They did a really great job of fending off elimination, especially after a 30-point loss. But I'm still going to go with the Sun to win the series, get that win in game 3 in Minneapolis. They've won the 2 games in Minneapolis at the the start of the season. One of them was with Brianna Jones. The other was the first game after Brianna Jones's season-ending injury, and that was the one that was a blowout in favor of the Sun. So they've experienced winning on the road at the Target Center, and I do think that experience will be in favor of the Sun. That'll propel them moving forward to the semifinals.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will be a close game in game 3. I think it'll come down to the fourth quarter, maybe the final minutes of the fourth quarter. But I do agree that I think Connecticut's just too tough. I mean, Minnesota has to have a lot to, I mean, like we saw in game 2, they have to have a lot that goes in their favor to be able to pull out a win. And I'm not saying it can't happen again, especially at home, but to have 2 straight performances like that, against a tough team in Connecticut, I think that I don't know, if I had to choose right now, I would also go with Connecticut in 3. That's kind of what I predicted. At the beginning of the series, that Minnesota would likely win game 2. I thought that they would, win game 2, bounce back to force a game 3, but I think Connecticut will ultimately come out on top, because, it's hard to, looking at Connecticut, it's just hard to limit, you talked about their guards in kind of their absence, or their step back and play in game 2 compared to game 1. I think that's hard to do in 2 games in a row. Those players, they're too talented not to bounce back, and it's hard to limit them, 2 games in a row. And I just think that's what's going to happen in game 3. Like I said, I think it'll be a very close game. Minnesota will definitely have a chance late, but I ultimately think the Sun are also going to win. But it's been an entertaining series. It's really been a tale of 2 games so far. It's been a flip-flop of both games, but it's fun. That's what a series is all about. It's about kind of playing that chess match, and with each team will respond. I mean, Cheryl Reeve said after game 2. We can't worry about what happened in game 1. Can't worry about what happened in game 2. We just have to worry about what happens in game 3 because it's going to be a completely different game, and that's the beauty of a series, and it'll definitely be fun to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, I agree. It'll be fun. Playoff basketball, no matter if it's the Lynx, the Sun, whoever it is, it's always a great time, and I'm glad it's here.
Yes.
I love being able to watch, 2 games at once if I'm watching, a different sport in basketball or whatever it may be. I watch all the sports at once. So I'm giddy
Yes,
about all
yes.
that. But well, Jamauri, what's that?
Likewise.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was trying to, flip flop like during commercial breaks to
yeah,
like, NFL if the game's on our commercial break, see what's going on.
yeah.
But it's definitely a great time, with because I do love the NFL,
Mhm.
with the NFL starting back again, and WNBA playoffs, uh, and the NBA coming up soon. Eventually, this is like part
Mhm.
of my favorite time of the year when it comes
Yep.
to sports.
I agree. It's a fun time. But well, Jamari, I appreciate you joining, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to jump on here and talk about the series. And hopefully we have a fun game 3. But we'll have to. I'm sure we'll be talking in our group chat, our Winsidr group chat throughout the next week. I'm sure to kind of
Yeah.
talk about things and what's taking place in game 3. But I appreciate you joining, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Mitchell.
Thank you once again to Jamauri for joining me on the podcast this week. As I mentioned, it's great talking basketball, Jamauri, and it was great to not only do the preview with him at Winsidr in Winsidr.com, but to talk to him about after the fact what we've seen so far, how our X factors, how our predictions, all of that, how that's playing out, and it's been a fun series so far. So it was great to chat with Jamauri and look ahead to Game 3 and what we can expect in that series. I also want to give a shout out to Jeremy Rushing for producing his podcast every week, as I do every week. Jeremy does a great job to not only make me sound like I'm not crazy, but make this podcast sound great, get it out to you guys in a timely fashion. And he's done a great job for us all season long. So I really appreciate Jeremy and all of his work he does for Hitting the Hardwood. I also want to, before we wrap things up, I want to bring to light our Patreon page. As I do every week, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. There's where you'll get really everything. You'll get a lot of exclusive perks. You get early access to podcasts. You get discounts at the Hitting the Hardwood store. You'll get anything from exclusive news, exclusive information, all of my written work, all of the written content, different news that you won't get anywhere else. So it's a lot of great stuff. It's jam packed with a lot of valuable information. So if you want to start receiving that stuff, please go check out patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. I also want to give a shout out to our 2 supporters and our 2 partners as they've been supporting us all year long here at Hitting the Hardwood. First one's Homage, second one's Better Edge. We'll start with Better Edge, betteredge.com. That's BETTOR edge.com. BetterEdge.com is a Minneapolis-based company, sports betting company, who does a great job in giving back to the community, being involved in the community. Partnering with a lot of great people, especially or including us at Hitting the Hardwood. I appreciate I appreciate Greg and the whole group at Better Edge. Please go check them out. And it's a lot of fun. You can bet on really anything, any sport, WNBA, any other sport you want. You can bet, in competitions. You can bet by yourself. You can bet with friends. I regularly do pick'em competitions for the WNBA games. I'll do that throughout the playoffs. So you can find that all on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Hitting Hardwood, and you can find a lot of that information. But please go check out Better Edge. And if you are a first time user, go visit betteredge.com/links. And when you use the promo code LYNX, that's LYNX, you get a free $20 in free play. So if nothing else, please go use that and see how you like it. Test out the app. It's very user friendly. And check out their platform. It's a lot of great stuff, and it's also you're supporting a great business. So I appreciate everything that Better Edge does to support Hitting the Hardwood as they have since day one. And the second one is Homage. Homage is a clothing company that does a lot of great WNBA gear, vintage gear, not only WNBA gear but any other sport. If you go visit us or find us on social media, you'll find 2 special URLs. that, if you can get WNBA gear and Minnesota Lynx gear. If you visit those links and you purchase something, it won't cost you anything extra, but a portion of your purchase will come back and support Hitting the Hardwood. So if you could do that, that'd be awesome. We appreciate any support that you can provide us. But you can go check out Homage at HOMAGE.com, homage.com. A lot of great stuff. I have the Lynx hoodie, the Lynx t-shirt, and the WNBA charcoal t-shirt. I love all three of them. I always say I'm going to go purchase more. I actually just did last week, so there'll be more stuff coming my way that I'll definitely be talking about soon. So please go check them out. Please go purchase something through Homage. A lot of great stuff, as I mentioned, and they do a lot to support the WNBA, and especially Hitting the Hardwood. They've also been a day one supporter, so I appreciate everything that they do in supporting women's basketball and Hitting the Hardwood as well. With that said, we're coming into an important time in the Lynx season. I mean, it's win or go home from here on out. Well, not from here on out, but for the rest of this series. Minnesota's been able to, showcase their ability to step up in an elimination game. They have another elimination game coming up on Wednesday night at Target Center in Game 3. And it'll be a very important, obviously very important game to be able to keep their season alive and to move into the semifinal round. I think if that is the case, they will surprise a lot of people, and they could potentially continue to make a run in the postseason. But it's been a fun series so far. It's been a fun first two games in Connecticut. It'll be an even better Game 3, I have a feeling, and I know that Target Center will be rocking. The Lynx fans will have that place buzzing. I'd anticipate it's a very good crowd that arrives at Target Center for that Game 3. And we'll see how the Lynx respond and how both teams respond. It'll be a fun back and forth battle, as we've seen all series long. So once again, want to thank you all for tuning into another episode of Hitting the Hardwood, and I appreciate all you guys do and all of the listeners for listening every week. If the season does end this week in Game 3, this podcast will not end. We'll definitely have plenty of content coming up here. I guess leading into the off season, if that's the case, otherwise as the postseason moves along for Minnesota. So thank you for tuning in to another episode. I will talk to you all next Tuesday. Have a great week and enjoy playoff basketball.